Somewhere right now, in a hospital or a birthing room, a woman is being told the same 3 words her ancestors heard 30,000 years ago. You're not alone. Picture the opposite. No hospital, no walls, no warmth. Just open, frozen ground, and a group that cannot stop moving, because stopping means starving, freezing, or becoming something's next meal. Now picture that a woman in that group goes into labor. Not next week. Not when it's convenient. Right now, in the snow, mid-migration, with predators tracking the herd they're following and no shelter for 100 miles. Here's the question that took scientists decades and one 27,000-year-old skeleton to actually start answering. How did anyone survive that? The mother, the baby, either, both. What they uncovered about how ancient women handled this moment doesn't just explain the Ice Age. It explains something about you that you've probably never managed to put into words. Here's what most people assume, and it's almost completely wrong. That ancient birth was some brutal, solo, survival of the fittest event. A woman walks off alone, grits her teeth, and either lives or doesn't. That image is in documentaries. It's in the way we picture cavemen. It's not what the evidence shows. There's a question buried inside this topic that even researchers who spent entire careers studying human evolution didn't fully understand until the last 20 years. Why does human childbirth require help in the first place? Not, why is it hard? Every large-brained mammal has a hard birth. Why does it specifically need another person in the room? That question has an answer, and it's written into your own body right now, whether you've ever given birth or not. I want to get there, but first, there's something else. A second mystery buried in a cave on the Italian coast. A discovery so specific and strange that when the full picture came together, the researchers almost didn't know how to write it up. And there's a third thing, a feeling you've had. A need for someone in the room during the worst moment of your life. You've never questioned where that comes from. By the end of this, you will. So let's go back. Way back. To a time before anything you think you know about childbirth existed. It's roughly 27,000 years ago. What will one day be called Puglia, on the heel of what becomes Italy, is right now just limestone cliffs over a cold, gray sea, and a woman we'll call Mara. Mara is maybe 20 years old. Her hands are already scarred, years of scraping hides thin enough to wear, tough enough to survive in. She's 8 months pregnant, and her group has been moving for 6 days straight, following herds south, away from ice sheets that have been swallowing the land behind them for a generation. The air is cold enough to freeze the inside of your nose on every breath. At night, the group presses together under hide and bone, and the only sound is wind and breathing, and underneath both, something Mara has learned to listen for. Silence. Real silence. The kind that means something out there has stopped moving too, and is watching. Her lower back has been aching for 2 days. She hasn't told anyone yet, because in a group that has to keep moving to survive, a woman going into labor isn't just her problem. It's everyone's problem. No fire lit tonight. Just the smell of wet hide and cold stone and smoke from yesterday's camp still clinging to everyone's clothes. Her feet ache in a way that stopped being ordinary pain days ago. That kind of numbness is usually a warning sign. Tonight, it might be the least of her problems. What Mara's body was about to do, what almost every pregnant woman in an Ice Age migration eventually had to do, is something scientists found evidence of in a cave less than a day's walk from where she might have stood. When they understood what it meant, they almost didn't publish it, because it didn't look like an accident. It looked like something else entirely. The biology matters here, so stay with me a moment. Human childbirth is broken. Not broken like difficult. Broken like an engineering conflict that was never fully resolved. About 7 million years ago, human ancestors started walking upright. To do that, the pelvis had to narrow. A wide, ape-style pelvis doesn't work for walking efficiently on 2 legs. Around 2 million years ago, brains started getting dramatically bigger. Bigger brain, narrower pelvis. 2 trends moving in opposite directions inside the same body at the same time. No other primate deals with this. A chimpanzee gives birth in minutes, often alone, catches her own baby, guides it out, done. Human anatomy doesn't allow that. The human birth canal isn't a straight tube. It's twisted, which forces the baby to rotate on the way out. So a human baby is typically born facing away from its own mother. A human mother, mid-birth, cannot easily see her baby's face. She can't reach down and guide the delivery the way almost every other mammal on Earth can. Anthropologists Karen Rosenberg and Wenda Trevathan spent years documenting exactly this, and they named it obligate midwifery, not sometimes helpful, obligate. Required. Built in. That's the first piece. Here's what's even stranger. The problem isn't just the head, it's the shoulders too. In 2022, a research team at Kyoto University, led by Naoki Morimoto, used CT scans to compare shoulder development in human, chimpanzee, and macaque fetuses. In nearly every other primate, shoulder growth stays steady through gestation. In humans, something odd happens in the final months. Shoulder growth actually slows down right before birth, then speeds back up immediately after. It's not random. It's not a flaw. It's a workaround. Millions of years in the making, to stop wide shoulders from getting stuck in a canal that's already too narrow for the head going through first. Every human body carries physical proof of this old standoff. Ancient humans didn't inherit an easy birth. They inherited a body that had been quietly, desperately negotiating with itself for millions of years just to make delivery survivable. What got passed down wasn't a solution. It was a patch. Now think about Mara's situation. She's not just in labor. She's living out the end result of that negotiation, in the cold, on the move, with no clean water, no fire, and a group that has to keep walking. Remember the cave I mentioned? In 1991, archaeologist Donato Coppola was excavating a cave called Santa Maria di Agnano near the town of Ostuni. What he found stopped the dig. A young woman's skeleton, no older than 20, curled on her side, her head covered in hundreds of tiny shells pressed into red ochre. And inside her pelvis, still in anatomical position after roughly 27,000 years, the skeleton of her unborn child. Researchers call her the Woman of Ostuni. In 2017, a team using synchrotron imaging examined the teeth of that unborn fetus layer by layer, like reading rings in a tree. What they found were stress markers, physical evidence the fetus had gone through at least 3 severe episodes of biological stress in the final 2.5 months before death. Something had gone wrong, slowly, over weeks. The community around her didn't abandon her when it happened. They buried her, mother and unborn child together, with more care and ornamentation than almost any other burial from that entire period. Hundreds of shells, careful positioning, red ochre pressed by hand. This is the part most channels skip. The Woman of Ostuni is proof of 2 things at once: that Ice Age childbirth could go catastrophically wrong, even for a healthy young woman surrounded by her people, and that when it did, she wasn't left behind. She was honored, like almost no one else in her community. Remember what I said at the start. This moment was everyone's problem, not just the mother's. That's about to land. We've been building to this. The mismatch between brain and pelvis. The obligate midwifery. The Woman of Ostuni, buried with more care than almost anyone else in her world. It all leads to one answer. Ancient women survived Ice Age childbirth, mid-migration, in brutal cold, because human birth was never designed to be a solo event. Full stop. Evolution didn't just fail to make birth easy. It built human bodies to require another person's hands. And ancient groups built their social structure around making sure those hands were always there. That's not a guess. In nearly every hunter-gatherer society ever studied, birth is attended by mothers, sisters, experienced women, sometimes several at once. Rosenberg and Trevathan argue midwifery may be, quite literally, humanity's oldest profession, older than most tool-making refinements, older than most of what we'd recognize as civilization. A species that needs assistance to reproduce will only survive if that assistance becomes non-negotiable, woven into the culture as deep as it's woven into the body. So when a woman like Mara went into labor during that migration, the group didn't leave her. It couldn't, not without risking both lives. Someone stayed. Someone who had delivered before, who knew to guide the shoulders, clear the airway, and get the newborn against warm skin within seconds of birth. Because in sub-zero air, a wet newborn loses heat fast enough to die from it. These weren't improvised decisions. They were accumulated know-how, passed between women across generations, long before anyone thought to call it medicine. Here's what that actually means. Your own species evolved to need another person at its most vulnerable. That's not a fact about the Ice Age. That's a fact about you. One more thing. This is the part nobody really talks about, and it'll stay with you longer than the rest. The very same trade-off that gave humans a big brain, the thing that let Ice Age people plan migrations, build shelters, track herds across a dying landscape, invent language and art, that exact trade-off made birth one of the most dangerous events a human body could go through. Intelligence wasn't free. Somebody paid for it, generation after generation, in maternal and infant deaths. The Woman of Ostuni isn't a rare anomaly. She's a data point in a pattern that repeated for tens of thousands of years across the Ice Age world. A pattern researchers only started piecing together once they stopped treating ancient death as random noise and started asking what it was telling them. We still live inside this trade-off. Childbirth mortality isn't what it was. Modern medicine fixed a massive part of that. But the underlying vulnerability never left. We build entire lives around a dependency that rarely gets named. The fact that at our most cognitively powerful, we're still physically dependent creatures who can't do the most important biological thing alone. Which brings me to that feeling. Remember how this started? Someone in a hospital room right now hearing, "You're not alone?" Now you know exactly why that phrase lands the way it does. Not as comfort, as biology. Every time you've wanted someone beside you during something frightening, a diagnosis, a surgery, a birth, even just a hard phone call you've been dreading, you're not being needy. You're not weak. You're running 5 million years of programming that decided somewhere back in the dark that human beings don't face their worst moments alone. Because the ones who tried mostly didn't survive long enough to pass that on. Mara, or someone very much like her, made it through that labor because someone else's hands were there in the dark, in the cold, doing what human hands have done for 250,000 years. Catching, warming, staying. You're the end of an unbroken chain of people who refuse to let each other give birth alone. You didn't invent needing someone in the room with you. You inherited it. If this changed how you see childbirth, or how you see yourself, subscribe. Every week we go further back to the exact moments that made us who we are. Next week, the Ice Age skill that let a species with no fur and no claws outlast the Ice Age itself. You'll want to be here.